We are conditioned to look for the loudest voices in the room, the politicians at the podium or the CEOs on magazine covers. But the strongest form of influence, the kind that dictates a life's trajectory, is the one you never actually feel happening. Our obsession with being in the room is an evolutionary relic. When you stand physically in front of someone, their brain is hit with a fire hose of sensory data, micro-expressions, posture shifts, even the smell of the room. This creates immense cognitive noise. A target's nervous system is running dozens of defensive subroutines just to process your physical presence, diluting the actual signal you're trying to send. Human power scales when it decouples from the body. Before the cuneiform tablet, a leader's influence ended exactly where his voice faded. But a clay tablet meant a king's order could reach across miles, long after his body turned to dust. The intention remained, purified. Technology continuously reduced the friction of distance. The printing press allowed ideas to spread without a single handshake. The telegraph collapsed the time delay of distance to near zero, allowing a financier in London to trigger a market panic in New York without ever crossing an ocean. Power expands as the physical body becomes irrelevant. Today, a single coder influences the dating and spending habits of millions they will never meet. If the trajectory of influence is the removal of physical barriers, the final frontier is raw consciousness. To understand how consciousness influences reality remotely, we have to look at the mechanics of choice. In the 1980s, Benjamin Libet used EEG machines to monitor subjects as they made spontaneous decisions to move their wrists. He found a measurable spike in brain activity, what neuroscientists call a readiness potential, a full half-second before the person was consciously aware of wanting to move. Modern fMRI studies have pushed this gap further. By mapping the brain in high resolution, researchers can now predict which hand a person will choose to press a button up to 10 full seconds before that person is consciously aware of the decision. This suggests the conscious mind is a press secretary. It doesn't make policy, it just steps to the podium after the fact to invent a rational-sounding justification for decisions already forged in the dark, unconscious machinery of the brain. If the conscious mind is the last to know, arguing with logic is a waste of energy. The true point of leverage for an invisible operator is to bypass the press secretary entirely and infiltrate the unconscious backroom where the decision is actually made. Accessing that backroom requires the receiver shift. This involves treating the brain as an antenna calibrated to detect ambient frequencies. When you feel a sudden wave of anxiety in a crowded city, you are detecting a leak in the environment, a frequency of stress that you are downloading rather than generating. Most people try to influence reality through the floodlight of brute force, high-intensity, scattered effort that creates more heat than light. Operators, instead, use the zero-point state. They achieve a level of internal silence so profound that their mental photons march in lockstep, turning 100 watts of diffuse worry into a 100-watt laser capable of cutting through the noise. This enables active vectoring. Instead of using the sledgehammer of a direct command, the operator saturates the environment with a specific emotional texture, like the feeling of a triumphant partnership. They build an invisible, emotional house and simply leave the front door open for the target. Human nervous systems naturally entrain to dominant rhythms. An operator who maintains a slow, deep, resonant biological state can force a chaotic target to sync to that rhythm. Their heart rate literally slows to match the operator's pacemaker. By altering the emotional gravity of a situation, you slope the psychological landscape. The desired outcome becomes the path of least resistance, and the target drifts into your design, while their press secretary takes credit for the original idea. This dynamic extends into the physics of matter. In variations of the double-slit experiment, researchers like Dean Radin asked trained meditators to focus their intention on a particle emitter. In quantum mechanics, particles exist as a wave of probability until they are observed or measured. Statistically significant results showed that coherent human attention biased the pattern of the photons. Without physical contact, the focused mind forced the wave of probability to collapse into a specific physical reality. Human attention functions as a physical vector. If a single mind can bias a lab system, The collective focus of billions suggests a mechanism for editing the probabilistic landscape of our future. It is a tool for smoothing the path of least resistance at scale. If this physics is utilized by high-frequency traders and tested in CIA Faraday cages, why is it viewed as a cultural joke? The disparity is maintained by the containment strategy. This involves hiding the actual mechanics of power inside a mountain of cheap, commodified New Age garbage. By making the concept look absurd, the system ensures that serious academic talent and public interest stay far away from the truth. This strategy preserves managed agency. Society functions like a maze, where individuals are given the comfort of choice, turning left or right, while the menu of choices is strictly curated. We are treated as rats, believing we are free because the maze is too vast to see. Realizing that you are a transmitter, not just a receiver, bypasses the central points of control that hierarchies rely on. If millions of people regained their individual agency through these physics, the predictable, suggestible behavior that the global economy depends on would become unmanageable. Visibility is mistaken for power, but the highly visible leader is just a fragile target, subject to the whims of the crowd and shifting algorithms. The apex operator is the gray man, the person who remains in the zero-point state, designing the future in absolute silence. They leave the room before the applause begins, because they know every moment spent seeking validation is energy bled away from the work. Trading the calories of public applause for the ability to be an unseen architect offers a different kind of freedom. You no longer need the world to see you to shape it. We spend our lives defending the fortress of our free will, certain our thoughts are our own. But if the strongest influence is the one you never feel happening, when making your first choice tomorrow, how will you know it was yours?